Working with inverses just a little bit more. Yesterday was inverses from graphs. Today we're going to work with inverses from equations. So we're going to be doing like some algebra. The concept is exactly the same though. Yesterday I tried to drill into your head that an inverse is when you take the x and the y and switch it. I'm going to write that right here. Switch x and y. That is basically what you do with all inverses, whether it's a graph or whether it's an equation. So I have a problem that's somewhat worked out, and it's done step by step, so you can see how we should attack our problems when we get to them on the next page. So step by step, here's the explanation of how to find an inverse from an equation. So first of all, I don't like seeing problems with this f of x in them when I'm doing an inverse. So the first thing I do is I switch it to the letter y. Because in Algebra 2, the letter y is the same as f of x. What happened? Oh, well just close one eye. So the first step right here, here's what they did. They put the y in. And then the second step is once you have x's and y's, switch them. Now nothing else moves. The only thing that moves is literally the x and the y. So take a look at this. If I take this y, and I put it in front of the 1/3, and then I take this x, and I put it where the y used to be. So all I'm doing is switching the x and y, which is the main concept of what an inverse is. Now once we've gotten to that point, we would have to do some algebra to actually solve it. I don't have the work here, but I'm going to put it over here because there is a question very similar to this on the test. Remember I gave you test questions yesterday? I'm going to tell you questions that are very close to what you'll see on the test. There is a test question that has a fraction on it, just like this one. So I'm going to teach you right now how to solve a problem that has a fraction on it. So let me copy it over here so I can have some more space. X equals negative 1/3 y plus 1. So basically, like, our last step is to get the y all by itself again. So to find an inverse, we switch the two letters, and then we solve for y. So to solve for this y, I have to subtract 1. Now the nice thing about these problems is we actually don't really do the math, because for the most part, like sometimes we can't, and then other times I just don't want you to. So right here when it says x minus 1, it just stays as x minus 1. They're not like terms, so we can't do anything with them. Now this is the trickiest part of all, and it's not that bad once you learn how to do it once. The next thing we have to do to get the y by itself is make the negative 1/3 go away. So in math, if you ever want to make a fraction go away, all you do is multiply it by the reciprocal. Reciprocal is when you flip a number over. So we're going to switch it over to 3/1, which is really just 3, right? But we also want the negative to go away, so we're going to put the negative on it. That will cause all of this to cancel. Now here's the catch. This is an equation, so whatever you do to one side, you have to do it to the other side. This is the part where people make a big mistake. When I said do it to one side, you have to do it to the other side. You got to make sure you do it to the whole side. So when I put times negative 3, remember 3/1 is just 3, that's not right, because right now that just means times it to the x. So to make this correct, you would have to put this in parentheses. And I know normally you guys would want to distribute, but I'm going to tell you that in this inverse stuff, they hardly ever work anything out, so you can actually just leave it like that. So it would be negative 3 parentheses x minus 1, and then our goal was to get the y by itself, right? But the original problem didn't have a y, it had the f of x. So to show people that this is the old problem, but it's the inverse, we would put the f of x back, but we would put a little negative 1 up here. And that's our final answer. And if it bothers you that, I know some of you are looking at this and you think it's backwards. If it bothers you, you can put the f of x on the other side. Technically, it's the same thing though, so it doesn't matter which side it's on. So we're going to take a few minutes to practice that on the problems on the back, following the same 4 basic steps as before. Step 1, make sure there's a y in the problem. If you see f of x, change that to the y. Step 2, switch the x and the y. Step 3, solve the y. And then step 4 is put the f of x back with the little negative 1. So I'm going to go to the next page. We have 4 problems we're going to try. And when I created these problems, I created them thinking what could happen on the test. So we've already kind of talked about the fraction. So there's the fraction one, kind of like the one we just did. There's a possibility of having radicals or square roots, cube roots, and then you have the possibility of having exponents. So what I want to do for you today is I want to have an example of each type. That way there's no excuse as to why you can't get it right on the test. So starting with the first one in the top left corner. Step 1, change this g of x stuff into a y. Step 2, switch the x and the y. So the only thing I'm going to touch is this and this. Everything else is going to stay exactly the same. -4 is here, +1 is here. Step 3, solve for y. So we're going to try to get the y by itself. I'm not sure if you're going to catch on to this, but this is just a linear equation, and the steps for solving a linear equation are pretty much the same every time. Start off by getting rid of the 1 because it doesn't have a letter on it, so I subtract 1. So I have x minus 1 equals -4y. And then the last step is to get rid of this -4. Right now it's being multiplied, so to get rid of it, I have to divide it. And if I do it to one side, I have to do it to the entire other side. So when I underline the whole thing like that, it's kind of like putting it in the parentheses like I did in the first problem. So then these cross out. Now we don't need the y anymore, so we can put the f of x back because we're basically done. Put the little -1 to tell them it's not the same as the original, it's the inverse. And then we just copy the problem that we came up with. So it's x minus 1 over -4. And that's our answer. So that's how you do it when it's a linear equation. Now I want to show you another example, and I want to show you how to do it if it has an exponent in it. So the next example is the h of x example. The h of x example is just like all the other ones. I don't care what letter it has. We're always going to switch it to a y first. So y equals 2x to the third plus 3. Second step, switch the x and the y. So we're going to put x here, y here, and then everything else is going to stay exactly the same. So the equal sign, the 2, the 3 up here, and then the plus 3 right here. So all we're doing is switching the x and the y. Then we try to get the y by itself. So I subtract 3. Subtract 3. This is x minus 3. 2y to the third is left over. Now in math, you have to do things in a certain order. So we actually have to get rid of the 2 first. So we're going to divide it by 2. Underline the whole thing and divide that by 2. So then we have y to the third equals that whole big fraction over there. Yeah, that's exactly what we have to do. The opposite of the third power is a cube root. So a cube root is basically the radical with the little step, and then we put a little 3 on it. That causes these guys to cancel each other out. And then again, whenever you do to one side, just make sure you do it to the other side. Oh my gosh, that's not a negative. I don't know why I put a negative. I was meant to put the little step. That's a 3. So our final answer is the f with the little -1 up here. So that's read as the inverse. We don't say the little -1. And then we put the cube root, x minus 3 on the inside, and then 2 on the bottom. Yeah. Oh, that's my bad. Yeah, you should. I was just following that first example. You should make it match that original problem, because if I say it's an F, someone's going to go look for an F somewhere in the work. Yeah, that was my fault. Yeah, I didn't do that in the first one either. I started putting all as Fs. Yeah, this one right here should actually be a G. Good catch. I was on fire, so I didn't even notice. You have questions? Say it again. Well, we're sort of doing PEMDAS, but we're doing it backwards. Yeah, when you solve equations for a specific letter, it is PEMDAS, you just do it opposite. Yeah. That's why our first step is always the adding and subtracting step. I'm gonna do the h of x up here on the top right. Probably should have used a different letter, but that's okay. So in this problem, what was the first step? You got to get the y there first, right? So we put the y. So we have the cube root of x minus 3. After the y is there, then what do we do? Switch it to x. So I'll change colors on that part so you can see that's what I'm doing. And then copy everything else down. Nothing else moves. So I put this back in here. Got the minus 3 right here. And then our next step is to just solve for y. When we solve for y, we want to get rid of this 3 first since it's not covered underneath that radical. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. So I have x plus 3 equals the cube root of y. I'm about to guess. Yes, absolutely. So to get rid of a cube root, you raise it to the third power and then they cancel each other. And then if you do it to one side, you got to make sure you do it to the entire other side. So I have to put in parentheses before I put the 3. So when I put this 3 up here, if I don't have the parentheses, it only goes to the 3 when I need it to go to the whole side of that column. So now our final answer is h inverse of x equals x plus 3 in parentheses cube. And that's our answer. Now that last problem, we're actually just going to skip it. It's pretty close to the first one we did. It might even be exactly the same as the first one we did. I don't even remember, but it's the same thing. So I gave you like one example of each type. You need to know how to do it if it has a square root. You need to know how to do it if it has an exponent. You need to know how to do it if it has a fraction. You need to know how to do it if it doesn't have a fraction. So my main goal for today was to get you in class practice time so you can solve these yourself. So for assignment 0.5, which is the last one of the chapter, you are going to do, let's go ahead and do all the way to 15. So 0.5, numbers 1 through 15. We have lots and lots of time. We still have like 30 minutes left of class. I think, yeah, about 30 minutes of class. That should be a lot of time for you to get help if you don't understand.